Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 6, Episode 32 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos, and that stands for Q&A and then some extra stuff, the important stuff in that being P for podcast, where if you're on the video right now, you can access this on all the major podcasting apps, or at least as far as I'm aware, if you check out links in the description. And that the reason why we upload this as podcast is in large part due to our patrons on
also
Patreon.
A P.
Yeah. So that's the P. And just right at the top, we're going to get into a question. And this question is more of a PSA. So it comes from Johnny Sins. And they say, where do you go to submit questions? And as most people who watch this, we would hope know, you can just comment, right? We'll pull from anywhere.
That's the C. Comment.
Yeah. And, you know, what this really is sort of open call to anybody who's had a question they want to ask us, whether it is about injustice or maybe about books we like or media or something going on in the world, or really just if you have a question that you want to ask us for some reason, because, you know, we don't have a lot of questions this week, and we've sort of had to been a little more, we've been a little light on questions over the past
It might be
weeks.
interesting in the game. And we've spent a lot more time doing the T, talking, instead of necessarily A, answering questions. But I think it makes a lot of sense that this game has been around for so long that it's going to be hard to sustain a full hour every time with questions just about the game.
Yeah, although to be fair, we've only been doing like episodes like an hour long for like the past 32 weeks. The past 32 episodes.
So?
This is the beginning of the season. Because the first... this is an opportunity, if you haven't already heard it and you're listening to this right now, if you check out our podcast platforms, all of those have an episode with an hour and 5 minutes,
right,
sort of reminiscing about our channel. That is bonus content that you can only access on the podcasting app. And when we uploaded that was the first thing we had that was more than an hour long.
Okay.
So I do actually, I am sure about that.
So,
it's only been about that length for, you know.
Since this is a PSA, I do want to point out another thing. That there's some questions that lend themselves to like a one-sentence answer. We do that in the comments still.
Yeah.
Or if there's troubleshooting where there needs to be a bit of back and forth with the person who's asking the question where we need more details, in the comments is actually better.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we pick questions from the comments or comments from the comments that lend themselves to either a bigger discussion between us, or more of like a takeoff point for talking about something that may not be like strictly related to it.
Yeah, but the long and the short of it is ask questions if you got them. This is us asking you. And before we get to our first like question, I wanted to mention something because we just were doing this right before we started filming our video. We're going to the CNE, which is like a
Canadian National Exhibition.
Yeah, it's a thing in Toronto. It's basically a big fair.
It's been for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
It's the last 2 weeks of summer, basically, August, before school starts, before Labor Day.
Yeah.
And it used to be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I remember various things where there was like, I think, like an obstacle course where you would just do it and it was sponsored by somebody and you just get free candy at the end. Like a sort of convenience store or gas station sort of sizing of like a candy, and they just let you do the obstacle course as many times as you wanted. I was pretty young, so I just did the obstacle course like 4 times or something and got a bunch of candy. So you know, there was free stuff. I remember there was like Wrigley's gum, like basketball challenges and stuff, and tons of free stuff.
So when I was younger in the food court, there used to be a ton of free stuff. There used to be just new interesting things that were coming up. They used to have shows. There was a midway with a bunch of rides.
Yeah,
you know, the gambling kind of stuff where you're trying to win stuffed animals. All that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it's basically like a big fair, but in Toronto, and it's 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah, and so obviously we're mentioning this because, you know, it's our opinion that in the most recent years, it's become a lot more money grabby, right? And we still go. I wouldn't
even mind if it were money grabby if they just had more interesting stuff.
Yeah, more interesting things to grab your money. But we say that because we were looking and it doesn't seem like they have the big show this year, which was one of the previous draws where they would always have like a really well produced, it would be like
maybe acrobatics, maybe an ice skating show, something, right?
Yeah. It would always be something along those lines. But the other thing that I want to bring attention to is probably the worst coupon I've ever seen. So if you're not Canadian, you might not know what beaver tails are. But they're basically just like fried dough, like, and they're in like a sort of like rounded rectangle shape. If you have access to internet right now, which you should if you're watching a YouTube video, and you might if you are listening to a podcast, depending on whether or not you've downloaded it. But you can Google beaver tails, and basically it's just this like golden brown fried, like sort of like stretched out pancake,
it's like
almost
plate size. It's the size of a full plate.
Yeah. But like approximately rectangular, and then
how much does it cost?
You can put different toppings on it. I feel like it costs
like $8,
it's
$9.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like approaching $10, and
Yeah.
there's like different things. You can have Nutella on it. You can have like
whipped cream, strawberries.
I don't know about those. I know that you can do cinnamon sugar. I know that's an
Yeah.
option. I don't know all the different flavors. And then there's like different, like, I think there's like a Reese's Pieces one or whatever.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't matter. It's one of those, it's a fair food. It's like desserty, and it's like not cheap. It's like it probably in the $5 to $10 range, leading much closer to $10. And there's a coupon for them on the C&E website, which is buy 4 and get $1.50 off. $1.50, which is 37.5 cents per beaver tail. So they're giving you like not 10% off even.
Yeah,
because 10% off
would be would
mean that it would yeah 10% off would be close to $1. So they're giving you like 4% off if you buy 4. So,
each.
I mean, it almost doesn't even make sense, even if you're going to already buy the 4 beaver tails. It's almost just insulting.
So not even that long ago, they used to have these images of coins in the Toronto Star that they would scatter throughout the paper.
Yeah.
And if you cut them out, certain of the food court booths would offer promo. So you
it would be like a $1 off normally or something like that.
I don't know if it was a $1 off. It felt like it was less than that, but you'd have these specials or whatever deals. And now, so they don't have that anymore, and they're offering these deals of 3 or 4% discount.
Yeah, and there's like one lemonade stand that would give you $1 off, like a 22-ounce cup of lemonade, and it would give you 50 cents off the 16-ounce cup. Like, they specifically had to tell you. And for that price, it's like when you're saving 50 cents on a single cup of lemonade, like, it's not to say that people who aren't already buying it, it's not worth it, right? If you're already spending the money, it's 50 cents or 0 cents. So obviously, yeah, it's still worth it. I'm just saying that for what coupons are supposed to be,
they're supposed to draw. They're supposed to encourage people to go when they wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, for what coupons are, and sort of the idea of using them, right? These are the sorriest coupons I've ever seen. Like, getting 37.5 cents off a beaver tail if you buy in bulk is an awful deal.
Yeah, that's true.
So there we go.
We're still going though.
Yeah. No. What I mean, what are you gonna do? Not
it's
go?
A tradition.
Yeah, but we just wanted to bring, sort of shine some light on the most egregious coupon that I've ever seen. It was it's just an awful coupon. It makes me sad to look at it. So there we go. Getting into the first question.
Well, technically the second question now.
The first question that we're going to talk about at length. This one comes from DX Gen, and they say, can you tell me a team with Batman, Ninja, Nightwing as the basic damage dealer?
And when I first saw this question, I wanted to say no. And, I mean... So here's the thing. Let me read his passive, okay? So he's got a passive Shinobi Arts. When a Batman Ninja ally blocks an opponent's special attack, they gain 100 to 200% power per blocked hit. Teammates drain 25 to 50% of opponent's power and tag, and that range depends on how far the gear is fused. Or how high his passive is promoted or whatever.
Yeah.
I keep on wanting to say gear, it's not. So the problem is, it's a complete waste of his passive if you're using him as a basic damage dealer, right?
Yeah, it's like his setup is the opposite of a basic damage dealer. He's basically either a tank that can get free specials or a special specialist that can block.
Now, you can make the argument that because his passive is for the whole team of Batman Ninja allies, as long as you've got a team with other Batman Ninja players on it, then they would all benefit from it, so he's free to do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could, in a full Batman Ninja team, if there's nobody else that was a better basic damage dealer, you would do that. But in my mind, if you're using that team with Catwoman, right? If you're using Nightwing with Catwoman, she's a way better basic damage dealer because of her passive, where when she tags in or she does a special 2 or she knocks somebody out, she does plus 300% basic damage. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've got a whole series of videos how to build a multiplayer team, and maybe it's worth linking to it, even though the video that we did originally the videos that we did for that are pretty old. Yeah, so, like, to be clear, we are still going to answer the question, but it's an easy question to answer because you basically do the same thing
no matter who's your basic damage dealer.
Yeah, so there's nothing special. I mean, some basic damage dealers do something different, right? You could do the gears that boost basic damage and crit chance.
Yep.
So, you know, Netherrealm Kama, Blade of the War God, the Prometheum Sword. I wanted to say Prometheum Sticks, but it's not. It's the Power to Scream Sticks.
Prometheum Longsword. Right? Isn't it?
It might be, yeah. I can't remember. Yeah. It's Deathstroke's gear. And there might be minor change because, all right, so in this case, this Nightwing still does have, I think, an extra hit on the combo ender. So maybe that's a small advantage. But if that's why you're making him your basics guy, then you already know how to use gears with combo ender effects, right? Like Razagul Scimitar.
Yeah.
The gauntlets, maybe overpowered super. So it sort of plays itself out. Like if you're actually going to do it for that reason. So, all right, so there's an expression. There's a friend of your mom's who used to have this expression when we were playing cards.
Yeah.
Because when he'd have a crappy hand, he'd say, how am I supposed to make a hand out of a foot?
Mm.
So the idea being, I guess you could do that. You're sort of wasting his potential. And if you've got him on a team...
I think the phrase, how can I make a hand out of a foot, isn't a waste of potential. It's something that you couldn't do.
Oh, I guess... All right, so I misspoke. You're right. You're absolutely right. No, but I'm saying in this case, what you're doing is you're trying to make...
That's fair.
Nightwing something that he's not.
Mm.
And this Nightwing... Like I said, if you do not have Batman, Ninja, Catwoman, if you've got only Batman, Ninja, Batman Ninja, the Joker, that's the only time there's any real question about how you want to do use them. Mm. But in a Batman Ninja team, what Nightwing is there for is to save her with her passive, give her the advantage of his passive, and he just has to stay alive. If he gets knocked out too early, then Batman Ninja Catwoman doesn't get the benefit of her own passive, where she gets to be saved from a knockout once.
Yeah.
So then, in that case, I mean, really, you need him to be a tank. If he's a basic damage dealer and you actually bring him in to do basic damage, you get him knocked out.
Yeah.
Before Catwoman, you've wasted him.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's... I don't know. It's just my gut instinct was the rude answer to say just no, because
I will not.
I will not, because it's a waste. But
then we needed content.
Then we need content. But also, I guess the point is, it feels like, I mean, fundamentally, I mean, this is how they've designed the game really well. Is that when you get the characters and you actually play with them a little bit before you've promoted them, before you've done anything, then you get a real feel for what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And if you have an understanding of the game and you're building up your gears and deciding what you're getting, the gears, for some things, they should sort of play themselves. Like it should be pretty obvious what you're going to do with them. And if you're not sure, then you probably just need to play the game a little more.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. And here, next up, this is sort of a jumping off point, and it comes from a Reddit thread. And I think
so this is different.
Yeah,
we very rarely do this. Like you said earlier, we actually pull questions from the comments, but we'll use anything for fodder if we happen upon it.
Yeah, and so I think we have enough time here to read the entire thread.
Oh, you think so?
We're only going to make a jumping off point right at the end, but we might as well. So the first comment comes from Devlin16 always, and
I think always is part of the...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the bolding on this, it's Devlin16, sorry.
I think that was...
part of their tag, always make the right enemies.
Yes.
Yeah. So Devlin16 says, and this is not a comment to us in general, this is just a comment to sort of the post that it was on, right?
Right.
So they say, yep, I even remember when you needed to earn challenge coins in order to enter each battle of each ladder of the challenges. I remember when the challenges lasted almost 2 weeks, started on a Wednesday, went through 2 weekends, and ended Monday morning. Things change, sometimes for the better, but not always.
I feel like it lasted 3 weeks, like 3+ weeks.
Yeah, I remember it lasting about a month, actually.
Yeah, okay.
The next comment comes from Bionicle Zero in the thread, and they say the thing is that they improve the system wise, like there is no more challenge coins, making challenge days shorter, the introduction to promotion 10, but story-wise it's gotten, store-wise, not story, store-wise it's really bad, like when they introduced us to the Gotham pack, where you pay 300,000 credits only to get a bronze card. But yeah, it's for the better, but not always. And then Devlin16 says, But did they improve things? It really depends on how you approach it. Being forced to mine challenge coins resulted in many players grinding bonus battle 6 and as a result getting very deep pockets full of credits. Did level 60 Elite 10 affect the change? Is there really a difference between a level 50 Elite 7 facing a level 50 Elite 7 and a level 60 Elite 10 facing a level 60 Elite 10?
And this is where we jumped in.
Yeah, do you want to take us?
Okay, so I'll do
because you did write this comment.
Yeah, I said, yeah, there's a slight difference because health increases faster than damage with both promotions and leveling up. Going from 50 Elite 7 to a 60 Elite 10 increases health more than damage. So that means damage becomes proportionally less than health, meaning fights that tend to last longer.
And then Devlin16 says, interesting, and in whose best interest is longer fights, the players or the devs?
And then our response was, neither. Our preference is for fast, high DPS damage per second fights, win or lose. Clearly not everyone feels that way when you look at the number of teams that rely on healing or health boosting gears.
And then Devlin16 says, I'm with you on speed. I think it is the devs' interest to get us to spend more time in the game, so longer battles equals less battle points. Less battle points will lead us to play more to reach the numbers we are accustomed to. And so that's sort of going to be our jumping off point. And I think right off, I have something to say about that, which is I think it's interesting because playing longer, right, is generally a goal, right? Longer playtime is definitely the thing that we've moved towards in AAA games, right? Where people want to get more bang for their buck, right? And so longer playtime is sort of a selling feature, right?
So I guess what you're saying is that it's something that the players want and the developers are giving it to them.
Yeah, but in mobile games, it is not the same. I think the advantage in mobile games when they have you play longer is usually when you're watching ads. Because you play ads. And Injustice is not a game that shows you ads.
Right.
So playing longer means you watch more ads, which means they make more money off of you, right?
But not in a game that doesn't have
Not in a game that doesn't have ads. So I think it's possible that if you play longer, you're more likely to buy in-app purchases, right? Potentially. But there's...
Only if you want to play... So what they want to do is make you want to play longer, not to actually make you play longer.
Yeah. And so longer fights don't seem like they make you want to play longer necessarily.
It's the opposite. They're frustrating.
Yeah. Or, you know, I get not frustrating everybody, but if you're grinding, frustrating, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, you know, to this comment, I don't know if I agree with that just because I feel like playing longer here doesn't offer them any material advantage. I think stuff like daily rewards is to get you to play not
frequently
longer,
to come back to it.
To come back to it, to keep it in your mind, right? To give you reasons to come back. But
again,
I think,
make you want to play.
Yeah.
Like, want to be there.
But I think the length of any given play session is not particularly important.
Well, especially if you position yourself as a game where, because it is a mobile game, you're not normally sitting down in front of your TV so you can plug in your HDMI adapter so you can watch our big screen while you play.
Yeah.
It's for convenience. Maybe when you're sitting on the throne and you have a couple minutes to spare, you want to play, and that's not the expression. The expression isn't play and get off the toilet. But in this case it is, because they want you to be thinking about it so that when you've got a moment that you're coming back to the game and that maybe you'll feel motivated to play more often because it's just so much fun.
Yeah, so I feel like what happened was that the reason why they increased the cap is it's sort of like the choice based off of a type of game that this isn't anymore, where getting your guys maxed out was a lot more important. And I think in a lot of ways they still don't design the game around what we as players have realized, which is that, you know, the battle system, the multiplayer battle system, doesn't reward having higher stats, right?
Right.
So I feel like the way that they conceptualize it is still based off of the way that it was before multiplayer came out, right? Or maybe in early days of multiplayer where it was still possible to max everybody out, and so everybody was just maxing everybody out anyways, just out of force of habit, right? Because at the point we're at, maxing people out doesn't necessarily make sense. We don't actually do it for a lot of our teams, including the team you're looking at right now, right? We very purposefully not even put them up to Elite 7, right?
Right.
Which is, so even before they introduced level 60 Elite 10, you know, we're not even using the full sort of old, like, play space.
And I even feel like maybe Elite 4 would be, like, marginally better.
Yeah. So, you know, it still feels like when they wanted to add more content by, like, you know, they had Breakthrough, they wanted to give a reward, so they decided and probably wasn't called breakthrough before picking the reward. I obviously don't know what order happened. Maybe they wanted the reward first, right? The idea of breakthrough, and then made a game mode around it.
Right.
But either way, they had a sort of new content that they needed to offer qualitatively different type of reward for using, right? To distinguish it. And it was sort of, in their understanding, a reward to be able to get to get the numbers to be bigger on your guys, right?
Right.
Because when you view it, especially when you look at like single player, right? If there's no matchmaker, bigger numbers is always better, right? Makes it easier for grinding, right?
Well, you see that in offline play.
Yeah.
Where the opponents are fixed.
Yeah. But in that's true, it's not just multiplayer and stuff like Survivor, right? In a lot of the new game modes,
although Survivor scales up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So and Survivor is more like multiplayer in the sense that it doesn't actually make sense to have
yeah, not to try to use your biggest, strongest guys with the highest stats. It doesn't offer you an advantage. If anything, when you switch
it's all
players,
passives. It's all hiding abilities. It's all synergies and passives and stuff that doesn't show up in the scaling.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe this is an interesting time to mention to the people who started playing later that Injustice: Gods Among Us, the mobile game, was never, was intended originally to be an ad for the console game.
And I think it was meant to be a game in its own right, for sure, just because of how much content there was, right? It was, the amount of work they put into it with the models and the passives and reworking stuff for mobile, it's not just an ad, right?
I think it was more...
their in-app purchase like model right from the start, too.
I guess they were trying to, like, it was secondary because what they don't play on as much now, but they used to push really hard, was the mobile game unlocks.
Yeah.
So the console game players were encouraged to go to the mobile game because there's stuff that they couldn't get.
Oh, for sure.
Unless they made progress in these tasks in the mobile game.
And let me put it this way. I think it's both, and I think it's just it's because of the way that marketing works. Because mobile games, especially free mobile games, have such a huge inherent audience, right? Mm-hmm. And also, when you spend money on making a thing, when you're marketing, when you're AAA, I think like advertising budgets is something like 50% of the cost of making the game,
right?
Or something crazy like that. So when you're spending half the cost of making a big AAA game on advertising, you can turn out a mobile game pretty cheaply. And it has the advantage over a lot of advertising in that it's a product unto itself, and you can also monetize the mobile game. So it's advertising that has a chance to pay for itself.
Right.
Right?
And I think we can't overlook the fact that some of it wasn't that expensive to make the mobile game, because aside from Apocalypse, which they based the movements on General Zod.
Yeah.
Or maybe not General... Yeah, it was General Zod, the Man of Steel one. A lot of it they're just using the same models that they used in the console game.
That's
the
true.
Same characters.
They're sort of borrowing from it. Yeah, but I think the point still stands that they put enough work into it that I think it stands on its own. And
for sure, absolutely. Like, I think definitely there was some transition at some point where they stopped caring about the unlocks and they let them sort of not work.
Yeah.
That they realized that this game had an audience of its own, and then when they expanded the game and added, it used to be just a totally offline game. There was no gear, there was no online play. It was just a game, self-contained game. Bonus Battle 6 was the highest. Level 40 Elite 5 was the highest you could go.
Yeah.
I think when you say they put in a lot of effort or time or money or whatever it was in developing the game, that game was a whole different one. Just when it started for the first, I don't know, what, was it a year?
And I think this sort of brings it back nicely to Devlin 16's point, right? And especially when we're talking about the devs' interest to get us to spend more time in the game. I think a lot of their choices were actually, in one way or another, I think the appearance of value by spending more time in the game, right? So I think when you're talking about longer fights, it feels maybe like it's not true to us because longer fights don't feel better for the players. But when you think about having to grind for challenge tokens, right? Even all the way back then, right? That is definitely just to make us play longer. It's just to make you do more. You have to be playing the game, one aspect of the game to unlock the other aspect of the game, right? For access. And, that's probably not directly fun either, unless that was time that you're already planning on spending. So I think to some extent, maybe Devlin is a little more right.
Well,
than we initially said, but just it feels like it's not the right answer because it doesn't feel like it's actually benefiting the developers, but it might be the developers' intention, even if it's not
but maybe
actually benefiting them.
Maybe we're giving them more credit than we expect, right? Because for a lot of things, you can think ahead and plan what you want to create.
Yeah.
And sometimes, because it hasn't been done before, you test out certain things and you realize that it's not working.
Yeah.
And so maybe they had certain intentions, and we're sort of trying to infer what their intentions were based on what they actually created and where it ended up. But it's quite possible that they were just trying things out, because clearly the challenge tokens at it felt like for the longest time that they were like really a speed bump in trying to get where you want to go.
I don't even remember when they got rid of them, though.
But they got rid of them. They've been gone longer than they've been there. And I guess we could probably look at it through our old videos and see at what point the challenges no longer had it. Because they used to charge you for you could buy challenge credit packs with your tokens. So to me, I mean, I've always been a big proponent of, if you're going to spend money to support the devs, the best value is going to be on the power recharges. And given how everything else is priced, whether it's power credits or the early access cards or packs, I think that the biggest potential moneymaker that could appeal to a bigger part of the audience was the power recharges.
Yeah. Although I think your problem too is that you're sort of maybe not considering you're considering how you would purchase.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's always from my perspective.
Because it's the thing is, for whales, right? We are not the target demographic for spending a lot of money in the game. I think we've talked about this. We've definitely talked about this before, but monetization in games is totally centered around whales, right? And that's one of the reasons why it isn't super I want to say like welcoming to your average consumer or player, because it's not meant to appeal to you. It's meant to appeal to the like 5% or 10% or 1% or whatever the tiny fraction of players is, right? That spends a lot of money and gives you like 90-something% of your revenue. And most of those people also make their first purchase within like 24 hours of downloading a game, I think, if I remember from that's an unconfirmed, unlike research fact that I remember hearing a while ago that stuck with me, right? I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was, it's important to note that we're not the demographic, right? We don't spend a lot of money. And I mean, we could be, right? Because we have spent money purposefully on in-app purchases in the game, right? To support them. But
see, maybe I think, again, when you're talking about the intention, so this is maybe what their plan was, but that might not necessarily even been the best plan, because when you talk about the number of people who've played Injustice and the potential for making some money off them instead of none, like I would have been happy to spend real money on a pack with augmentations. I would have been happy to spend real money on a pack that would unlock a character instead of just giving you 1 or 2 or 3 copies of them.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of potential, and if you're working with the old paradigm of, there's a small percentage of people that are responsible for a huge percentage of the actual income you make off a mobile game.
But I think it's self-fulfilling. I think no matter how you price it, there's a lot of people who would never spend any money, and I think it's better if you've got a small core. It'll depend on how much your potential audience expands when you drop prices. Because if it expands a ton when you drop prices, then maybe you can make more money. But if you've got this certain percentage of people who are going to spend a bunch of money on it anyways, buy a bunch of in-app purchases anyways, it makes more sense to just have it priced for those people only. If by expanding it, all you're doing is making stuff cheaper, then people aren't going to spend as much. People might not spend as much net money. I know, and I know there's a point.
Yeah, but you'll never know. And it's not just spending stuff, the same stuff, and making it cheaper. I'm talking about stuff that they never sold. I'm talking about, I would have been happy to pay to like $2 to have the challenge for a character that hadn't been that hadn't repeated for a while.
That's true. So you're talking about an entirely new type of service.
I'm saying paying for augmentation packs, which they've never done. There's never been an augmentation pack.
But I'm saying you'd still need to price it in a way that is consistent with the way that they value currency in the game. Otherwise, you run the risk of people not, only buying the sort of most efficient pack, right? I feel like you don't have like a sort of stable in-app purchase like system if one of them is obviously a great deal and everything else sucks, which is fine depending on what your model is, but like it seems unlikely that if they're going to do like an augmentation pack, or if they're going to do like a challenge, like, or a character unlock in the store pack, which honestly a character unlock in the store pack or an in-app purchase of any kind is something that only is recognizable to people who have enough play experience to the point where it's probably not like a super valuable experience, a valuable thing to put up for early players, right?
Yeah, but out of those two examples, clearly the unlocking challenge character is related to something they're already selling at a much higher price, which is the early access packs. But the augmentation pack isn't related because all that is time.
I'm saying it would still be unlikely that it would be cheap because the way that it's still unlikely that it would be priced in a way that makes sense for the average person like us to buy because of just the precedent they've set.
Yeah, but I think that's the way that you can experiment with a game, right? So if you had, let's say, even if you had all the challenge characters, early access packs, and then we're not privy to any of this, right? But if they priced one challenge pack, not only they could do it cheaper, but do it where you actually unlock the character, then they could literally see if there's a better response to that, as long as they pick not like...
That's true.
Not Zatanna. And even if they price it out of sort of their established range...
Yeah.
You'd get more information from it. And I think
that's true.
If the game is the difference between the game failing and not failing is how much income they're drawing from their store, real life money, then I think it almost behooves them for all the goodwill that they built over the 5 years, creating this game that a lot of people still play. We're still making videos on it.
Yeah.
That it would be just so easy and so cheap.
Yeah.
To do that once.
It sucks because it really does seem like for the most part there's no lights are on. Sort of at the Injustice Mobile
right, when they spent a year giving us only the Suicide Squad companion gears, and it should have been an easy fix.
Yeah, it seems like they've mostly shuttered their doors and people aren't putting a lot of effort into this to add content to fix stuff that's not great, to do really much of anything to the game. And it's unfortunate too because there's sparks, right? We got moments, right, when they had like stuff like the metal characters. When were the metal characters added? It feels like a while ago now.
Was it December, January? It was not too long ago.
Yeah, but for a game like this, which really at its peak thrived from new content, right?
Yeah.
I think pretty heavily. It does seem like it doesn't just seem like they've slowed down massively, and it does feel like they're sort of pulling away.
Yeah, which is kind of sad. I mean, this is the only thing that... we start off YouTube doing other stuff, but this is really the only thing YouTube that we do now. We don't do the openings anymore. We do a lot less of the reviews, although we've sort of wrapped that into our Q&As every once in a while when something comes up that's interesting.
That's true. You know what? This might be a good time. We probably won't, but just as sort of a thought experiment, if Injustice were to totally die, if this was... I'm sorry, that was a weird couple of seconds of me just making vocalizations trying to get a sentence out. If this was no longer something that made sense to make as a channel, to whoever's been watching for pretty much the entire video, what would you like us to pivot into? We're probably not going to do it. Just but if you had a preference, we'd like to hear from you. And if it's possible that if it's reasonable or if it makes sense, or if it's an idea that we like, we might try stuff.
We've tried stuff before that's got maybe like 12 views, I think.
Back in when we were getting more views on our stuff, we would get more respectable numbers on pretty much anything that we uploaded, even if it was something that, as it turns out, almost nobody was actually interested in continuing to watch. We get much better numbers starting out. But yeah, so let us know, I guess, because that would be, I think, interesting to see for the people who still like us and support us, whatever number of people you are, right?
Yeah.
We'd be interested in seeing the kind of stuff that you like to see from us.
And that was a 5 ultimate run.
There we go.
Already.
That's quick. Okay. There we go. I think that's the note to end on. That's what we call a call to action. And by we, I mean that's what like people who are like trying to monetize stuff, right? It's like advertising. It's like comment in the description, right?
Yeah.
It's telling people to do something at the end of the video. So there we go. To finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to the people who are supporting us on Patreon. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, a big thank you to Console Peasant, who's supporting us at the highest tier last word. John Auriemma at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Mull, and Michael DeVries, who support us on the credited level. And Eddie G, Chris Wolf, who are at the gratitude level.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Komoda.